Okay, so the time is 18:05. We will begin with the hopes that others will join as we carry on. Once again, you are welcome to today's webinar. My name is Lubuto Grace, and I'll be one of the co-hosts today. I will briefly introduce Onzabeka as well for those who may not be familiar with the association. So Nzabeka stands for the University of Zambia Business and Economics Association. Our aim is to bridge the gap between theory and practice, real-world practice, and we do so through webinars such as this and other events that we've had. I will now hand over to Elizabeth to introduce herself and the speaker and what the program will be like.
Okay, thank you for that, Luvuto. As Luvuto said, my name is Elizabeth Fundafunda. I'm a fourth-year student at Bunza doing economics and political science. I will be your host for tonight. Joined by me and Luvuto is Chanozya. So before we get into the webinar, I'll just give like a brief bio of Chanozya. So Chanozya is a financial literacy educator through her social media pages. She was a finalist of the Youth Financial Contributor Award by the Economic Association of Zambia, as well as a panelist at the first ever Youth Summit by the EAZ. She's a recent contributor in the Our Money Stories Zambia magazine. She has pioneered the infamous hashtag 2021 Shares Challenge that has seen multiple people across Africa become shareholders. She is also a Mandela Rhodes Scholar as well as a Bates Trust Scholar. Welcome, Chanozya.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you guys. Sorry, I'm kind of recovering from a flu, so my voice is quite nasal, but hopefully this will be fine.
Yes, you sound good. So just before we get into it, the program will have the discussion, and then at the end we'll have a Q&A session. So whilst we go through the discussion, everyone in the meeting can feel free to just leave their questions in the chat, and then when we get to the Q&A session, we'll tackle those questions. So, Chanozya, let's get right into it. So could you tell us a bit more about the hashtag 2021 Shares Challenge? What is it about? How did it start? Um, what do you aim? What's your aim for the 2021 Shares Challenge?
Yeah, so thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and Unzabeka, thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, so I'm here to speak to you guys about the 2021 Shares Challenge, especially. So how it started was, I have been talking about finances, personal finance for a number of years now, and I had already started my investing journey, not in stocks particularly, but just investing in general. I think about three to 4 years ago. But when I was in South Africa, I was in South Africa for school at the time. I was like, I haven't yet gained enough knowledge yet to go into the stock market. And so when I was like, no, when I come back home to Zambia, meaning end of last year, I want to actually get into the stock market. And so when I came back, I think there was just this kind of thing of I would share about personal finance, like especially with my WhatsApp contacts. But there was this thing of, okay, I want to enter into the stock market, specifically in Zambia. And as I'm doing all this research, I'm realizing that, okay, not many people know about the stock market, and I'm knowing all this information. I want to start investing, meaning this year. And I'm like, you know what, let me actually bring people along with me on this journey. And so that's basically how it like just formed. Like I was like, you know what, let's make it a whole us thing. First of all, like let's all of us become shareholders in 2021. But then I think as the year started, I think I began to see that this is actually bigger because, you know, there's issues of ownership of our markets. You're thinking like how many people complain about, yeah, no, nationals get all the money and whatever. We don't own anything in our countries. Internationals foreigners get all the money from our countries and all of that. And I'm like, there's an opportunity here. Zambians are not participating in their markets, but not only Zambians, many Africans aren't participating in their markets, yet we always complain about foreigners own these things, foreigners own these things. And so it basically just became a thing of like, you know what, let me actually invite everyone, not just Zambians, but like wherever you are in Africa, can you start taking ownership of your market and become a shareholder, not just a consumer? You go to ShopRite, you go to all these companies, the more you consume, the more you make the foreigners richer. And so when you become a shareholder, you get to benefit. You're paying, yes, for a product, but then you get to actually benefit in whether it's dividends or capital appreciation in the share price. And so essentially you get to also control like the direction of all these products and the minerals and everything that is being produced by these companies. And so, yeah, it just basically, it took off from there. I could see people responding positively to it. And I'm like, you know what, this is a very real movement. And I think it's time for us to become owners in our country. And yeah, it's seen over 50 people so far all across Africa. It's not just in Zambia. As I mentioned, I was in South Africa, so I have a lot of people who I know from there, people who follow me as well across Africa. And so, yeah, that's basically where it started for me. Just started as a small thing for me to start my journey to encourage people to join it. But I'm like, no, people actually need to know this information. And so it then spread to being a bigger movement. That's how it got started.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you for bringing us along on this challenge.
Yeah.
It's about that we definitely participated more in our markets and all. So whilst on the subject, do you think that stocks really and truly are a good investment for students or just younger people in general?
Yes, they are. You know, like when we talk about even like wealth creation, right? The biggest causes of wealth creation in a country are businesses. Businesses, when you think of, for example, America, the businesses that exist, you're thinking Facebook, you're thinking Amazon, you're thinking Tesla. These companies are genuinely creating wealth in that country, right? But then the reality is not all of us will be a Jeff Bezos, or not all of us will be an Elon Musk to create these massive giant companies that actually create wealth and jobs and all of that. But when you become a shareholder, when you buy stocks, you actually participate in owning those businesses and actually help perpetuate what they're trying to do in the economy, and you create wealth. So I give an example of this all the time where I'm like, okay, maybe you're not Jeff Bezos, you're not Elon Musk, but if your parents, let's say your parents knew in 2010 that, okay, you know, Elon Musk is creating Tesla, if they knew some history about Elon Musk and they're like, you know what, let's just buy 50 shares. At that time, it was $17, which in Zambian kwacha was about maybe 3,400. If they decided to make this an investment for you guys, saying, okay, you know what, my kid will be going to university in 2018 or something, let me just buy this, let me make this as an investment, 3,400 kwacha. Do you know what it would be worth today? Like, this is just 10 years, this is 10, 11 years later, it would be worth over 600,000 kwacha. So 3,400 kwacha becomes 600,000 kwacha. So yes, we see like Elon Musk becoming a billionaire and all of that, but then just by you participating in that market, by becoming a shareholder, you actually see this wealth creation also on your front as the owner. And if your parents were even like better and decided like, no, actually, instead of just doing it at the time when maybe Elon Musk came into the picture with Tesla, let's maybe take it back to when Amazon started, and they're like, okay, you know what? My child has been born late 1990s, early 2000s. Let me buy shares. If they just bought the same 50 shares, at that time, our kwacha was even far, you know, it was almost at par with the dollar. So it was actually, we had a stronger currency at that point in time. If they decided to buy just those 50 shares, again, it would have cost them not more than 3,000 kwacha. At this point, it would be over 3 million kwacha. So imagine right now you're in university, you knowing that you have 3 million kwacha to your name, your parents bought you $50 worth, 50 stocks in these companies and stuff. So when you invest in companies, essentially you're beginning to create wealth as well, not just looking at these guys who are the actual business owners, but you, because you are a business owner when you actually buy a stock. So it's perfect for students because you're at a point where, first of all, stocks are very affordable. If you're thinking of maybe the Lusaka Stock Exchange, for example, you have stocks that go for as low as like 0.13 kwacha. That is very, like, 13 go essentially. Like that's very affordable for a student. If you're complaining that you don't have a lot of money and everything, with our most expensive stock in Zambia is like 63 kwacha. That is very affordable. So when you're talking about investments, there's a very low entry when it comes to stocks. You're thinking about wealth creation. You're thinking about, becoming a business owner. Through the stock market, you actually become a business owner. But then also, apart from low minimums, you have a long time. So when it comes to stocks, like you get to see returns happen over time. This isn't like a get rich quick scheme of like you invest today and then tomorrow you're rich. No, but you have a long period of time where you can see these people like Warren Buffett. 99% of Warren Buffett's wealth was actually created through the stock market for him past the age of 50. He's now in his 80s, 90s. And so basically you see this thing where you're able to create wealth over a long period of time. And when you're young, you're right at the perfect point, because it's like you are starting the journey, your kids get to benefit, your grandkids get to benefit. So like for a uni student, it's perfect because like very affordable to get into the stock market. It's not complicated. It's very affordable, low minimums. If you yourself can't own a business, you haven't yet thought about the next business idea of being, creating your own ShopRite or whatever, through the stock market, you become a business owner, you become a wealth creator. There are people right now in Zambia who have like inherited from like their grandparents and their parents right here in Zambia. They've inherited like a whole stock portfolio and are living off of dividends. And so when you start early, when you're a student, when you start early, you give yourself that opportunity to create wealth over a long period of time. So yeah, it's very perfect for you guys because you're young, it's very affordable. This is like the way to actually make money, a lot of money as well. As a young person, if you haven't yet come up with the grand idea that will change the trajectory of the country or whatever, you get to participate and actually be a wealth creator as well in the country. So yeah, it's very much perfect for young people.
Thank you for that. So speaking of wealth creation, do companies actually pay dividends on the LuSE asset? So how do dividends work?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the misconceptions that people then tend to have about a market. Like, yeah, you're talking about Amazon and you're talking about Tesla, but do people actually even make money on the LuSE? LuSE, they don't pay out dividends. I can tell you right now, that is completely false. I have looked at the data. I have the data. I have been able to see that our actually on LuSE, majority, we're talking about maybe even 80% of the companies do pay dividends, and consistently. Like literally, I was just looking at the data just now. Like I was looking at the past 10 years of data, and there's some companies that have paid every single year, inclusive of a year when there was a pandemic last year. Can you imagine, like where, companies were shutting down, companies were not making profits. Some companies in Zambia actually performed in a way that were able to even pay out dividends. And so, yes, people do make money in our stock market. We're talking about millions of dollars. Of course, our market is significantly smaller to the American stock market. The American stock market has, I think, about over 2,000 companies. We have just 20-something companies, but that don't let that fool you and be like, oh, okay, then it's just one quarters that go through the market. No, it's still millions. Like it's actually millions of dollars that go through our market on a daily basis. It's just that, it's significantly smaller to the trillions of dollars that happen on the American stock market. So people still do make a lot of money through our stock market. So yes, our LuSE companies do pay dividends. By the way, guys, just as a disclaimer, I'm here as a financial literacy educator. So this is just all about educating you guys and getting you guys on this bandwagon of starting your investing journey. This is not like investment or financial advice. Make sure that you always speak to a professional before you make that investment decision. But yeah, dividends are paid out on the LuSE.
Okay, thank you. So far we've spoken about how investing is a good option for students. You've spoken about how there's this gap. You've told us that it does pay off. So and then the next question is, where do we begin? Where does one begin in buying shares?
Where do you begin? So obviously in Zambia, we do now have an app called My LuSE. So it depends on which direction you go. Traditionally, the first step would obviously be to open an account with a brokerage firm, right? So a broker is just simply a person who buys and sells shares on your behalf. So you yourself, you don't go to ShopRite and be like, I want to buy shares in ShopRite. There's no one there who's going to attend to you. These things are more admin and management level. And so you use your broker. We have a list of certified brokers in Zambia. You can just find us on the SEC, like you can just Google LuSE brokers and they'll come up, literally, they will come up on Google right up. So yeah, you would go through a broker, open an account with them, and you will start your journey. So they're the ones who actually guide you through the process of like, yeah, opening an account, maybe there's a minimum fee, or maybe there's there's a maybe a minimum account opening fee, or maybe there is a minimum amount that you have to have in your account, or how much you need to have for you to be able to buy shares, or it just depends. It's almost like when you are opening a bank account, different banks will have different requirements for things. Maybe some banks are cheaper than the others. It just becomes a personal preference thing of like, okay, this one maybe has is cheaper for me, or this one has a better service, but it's not really a big deal which one you use. They all do the exact same thing. They'll help you open an account, you deposit money, and you can start purchasing shares. They're there to actually even professionally guide you on how you can, which companies to look at their performance, all of that. So yeah, it's a very, very simple process. But then if you want to use the latest innovation, we have an app called LuSE, which was actually released this year, just a few months ago. And it's been the way that LuSE is trying to get more people like you guys, students, to actually come on board. And on the app, it's very affordable to buy stocks. Like I've seen people buy stocks as like worth 30 kwacha, literally. So yeah, you would just open an account on the LuSE app. Again, you just pick a broker there. It doesn't matter which one you pick, and you can start your journey. It's not complicated, I can tell you that. Like it's a very smooth process in terms of actually getting to a point where you can buy shares. So yeah, opening a broker account is the first step if you're going the traditional route, or opening a LuSE account, my LuSE app account if you want to use the app.
Okay, thank you. So you tapped into our other set of questions. You shed light on who brokers are, what role they play, so they're like a mediation.
Yeah.
But would you want to go more on, does it matter which broker you pick, like on the LuSE app?
Yeah, so when it comes to the app, so I feel like the brokers, the differences actually matter more so if you're dealing with them directly, because when you're creating an account on the LuSE app, literally it's just like a list of brokers that you're going to choose. There's nothing different. Like when you enter into the app, you see that you actually even have the option to change brokers within the app. So it's not really a big deal. You can sign in with maybe Pangea or Stockbroker Zambia, but then when you're actually in the app, you get an option to switch brokers or add new brokers. So it's not a big deal. It's only maybe a bigger deal, not really, but it maybe is only a bigger deal when you're dealing with them directly, where it becomes a thing of, okay, maybe Pangea has got a minimum of 1,000 kwacha for you to invest, or Stockbrokers has a minimum of 500 kwacha, or Madis Mamco has got a minimum of 250. So that just becomes an issue of, what do you want? Like maybe then Pangea has got this service, or this one has got this service. This one sends you annual reports on a daily, like reports of transactions on a daily basis. This one adds all this to my perks. So it's not really like, it's not, at the end of the day, they all just buy and sell on your behalf. There's no big difference on the app. There's literally no big deal, because you can actually switch. In person, it just becomes a matter of personal preference, really. It just becomes, what you're looking for.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing some interesting questions in the chat. Keep them coming. We'll ask them during the Q&A session. I'll move on to the next question, which is, should we expect to incur annual fees? And if yes, how do we prepare for them?
Yeah, so when you're investing in stocks, no. So you're not going to incur annual fees. The fees come in when you're actually buying or when you're actually selling, because the app obviously have to do the admin for you and, basically make you a shareholder and all of that. And the fees are very minimal, like probably less than 2%, about 1.75%, 1.8%. So it's very, very, very minimal. And that happens only when you buy. So once you've bought, there are no fees. And the best part for our market, in other markets, you would pay things like dividends tax. Like when you get dividends, you'd pay things like dividend tax, or when you're selling shares and maybe you're your share price has appreciated, you would actually pay what is called capital gains tax. In Zambia, our government, put all those things on hold, and they're like, no, we want to encourage people to invest, so there's no tax. Essentially, what you gain in the stock market in Zambia is fully yours. It's all your money. So yeah, it's the beauty. It's like the only investment we have in Zambia where there are no taxes from the government. So that's a very good thing.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I know you mentioned that you have some brokers who give you like annual reports and whatnot. So even as we are purchasing stock and whatnot, so what additional information should we look out for regarding a company's performance in order to decide whether or not to buy or sell our shares?
Yeah, okay. So even before I get to that, so obviously this is a very big question, right? Where it's like, how do you go about picking a company? So my first starting point, and this is also Warren Buffett's first starting point, is, do you even understand what the company does? Because if you don't even understand what the company does, you most likely won't understand how it makes money, right? And so the starting point is, do you actually understand this company? Maybe even use its products. You understand exactly how this company operates and stuff. So that should be the starting point. Do not invest in a company. You just hear that, oh, Lafarge is doing well, but you don't even really know how Lafarge makes money. Or you hear that, yeah, Bats is making money, and just like, what is Bats? I didn't even know we had Bats in Zambia. So like, you need to actually understand, like, what is this company? What does it do? And then another thing, before we even get to performance, is the management of the company. I can't tell you how many companies, good companies with good products, have actually gone down because of the leadership of the companies. And so management is a very big deal, and is Warren Buffett he actually thinks management sometimes can even be bigger than performance of a company, because management takes the direction of a company forward or can completely trash a company. And so that's a very important deal. Like, who's running this company? What are their ethics? What are their main targets and their goals? What's their vision for this company? Because that is very important. And then obviously performance, right? You don't want to just buy a stock at any given point, because there are things like a stock being very overvalued, which just simply means it's more expensive than it should actually be in a stock price, because maybe there's like a hype, or like there's a trending something that maybe Hakainde has said that ShopRite is the next big thing, and so now the price of ShopRite has started like skyrocketing. That's not actually based on fundamentals. That's just it's basically speculation and the market being excited about something, which can impact the stock price. And so then now you come in and you buy at that point, and your stock price, you just see it tank. So performance is a very important thing. My first thing would be, like, the easiest answer or the quickest answer would be, make use of your brokers. They are actually certified and they're trained to be able to help you guys understand, like, where is this company right now in its performance? Is this the right time for you to be buying into this company? So your brokers are legally required to actually assist you in that process. But if you want to be an informed investor, for example, and you don't want to just rely on what the brokers are saying, you want to also have a conversation with them and ask them questions that are informed, like, not where they're just telling you and you're just like, oh, okay, you don't even understand anything that they're telling you. Then obviously you'd be looking at, someone is mentioning it here, for example, you'll be looking at the financial statements. Many of you guys are Unzabeka students, so meaning you probably should have done accounting at one point or another in your academic career, right? So you would be looking at the financial statements, which are found like in the annual reports of companies. You'll be looking at things like their profits. I can't go into all the technical because I'm not here to like teach the actual way how you can analyze a company, but you'll be looking at things like their profits, their return on equity, their return on invested capital. You'll be looking at their net margin, but most importantly, the most deciding factor will be, at this point, looking at a company in comparison to its peers in its industry, for example. Is this company rightly priced, right? Again, it comes to the issue of, is this the right time for you to buy this company? Or right now, is it very overvalued that if you buy it, you just see that tank in the price? Because remember, it has to correct to the right price of what the company is worth, essentially. And so, yeah, I mean, I do have, if you are very interested in this idea of how you can actually analyze the company, analyze its performance, I do have a product which does get a lot of all this information for you already, from all the annual reports for the past 10 years for the companies on the LuSE. It gives you the real data. You can see the dividends history and all of that and stuff. So yeah, that's for the people who are really interested. But I would say the starting point is your broker. And if you want to be even more informed, you would be looking at the annual reports, but that does take a bit of time and sort of like, you need to know what you're looking for. And so, yeah, I do have a product for that. If you're interested, yeah, we can talk about it later. But yeah, essentially that's how you'd go about it. But there is some technical stuff involved.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you've spoken about a lot, and we'd just like to know what your financial journey has been like with stocks, like how you've gotten to where you are, where you're heading, any points that you could give us?
Yeah, as I said, of all the investments, stocks were kind of the last thing for me to get into. Because for me, I was just very interested in, I need to try everything. I want to be able to see all the different kinds of investment products and how they're able to give you different, like just different things for your portfolio. And so stocks, as I mentioned, I got into them this year. Sorry. And honestly, it's been very exciting. I will be honest with you. The first company I purchased, I can't tell you what companies I purchased because I'm actually legally not allowed to, as a financial literacy educator. The first company I bought earlier this year tanked the next day. But again, because I personally picked companies very carefully, looking at the data, I made an informed decision. And I knew that my strategy is long-term. So we're not looking for like quick gains or whatever and trying to make quick money and stuff. And I held on to all the stocks that I've had, and I've had, massive growth on my whole portfolio. I received my dividend, my first dividend not even too long ago. And yeah, it's been very exciting. And I think more so, it's actually been more exciting for me to see people experience that as well through the challenge, where it's like, you know what, like this thing is real. This is how you start building generational wealth. Like even when you think of people's birthdays, now me in my head, I'm just like, let me buy you stocks. Like that's the in thing. That's the new language of like, we can't just be doing things that are just consumption based, that don't actually add value to our future. We're just consuming, it finishes, you buy a dress, it gets worn out. Like, it's like, let's do something that can actually change the trajectory of your future. And so, yeah, it's been very exciting. My goal obviously is to build a whole portfolio. One day, like when I was talking about this, the challenge, I was like, you guys, I want to receive more in dividends from Puma than I actually pay for fuel. Like literally, it's just like, no, I go to Puma and I, whatever. Or if I'm buying from Bata, my kids, their shoes are, bought by the dividends I earn. Or like, I want to have that kind of experience where it's that I'm not just a consumer, but actually I'm being paid. I'm being paid being a shareholder, being an owner of a business. And so, yeah, basically it's been amazing. And I'm here to create generational wealth through the stock market. So this is a long-term game. I actually recently bought my mom stocks as well for Mother's Day. Like, this is something that I'm very serious about. Like, it's like, guys, let's be owners. We can't just be consumers. We can't just be eating money. The money is just going. Like, it's like, how can this pay you? Like, how can this actually make you richer? And so, yeah, it's been great.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned how the very first time you bought your stocks in a certain company tanked the next day. So what are the things that you learned from that, and just in general that you'd tell yourself when you began your journey at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, so I think most importantly is having a strategy and thinking long term, right? So as I've said, we're not here to, get rich quick. The stock market isn't that, like every year, whereas maybe with a fixed deposit, you have a fixed percentage that you receive at the end of the year. You're investing in a business. If you guys have done small businesses or you've seen people with businesses, can you really say that, okay, this business is going to perform exactly like this? Could you have seen, even for example, last year, that a pandemic would have hit and so many people's businesses would have gone? You can't predict like that, and so you have to have a long-term view of your investment, that it's not for 1 year. There could be a season, like for example, the financial crisis that happened in 2008. Could people have seen that coming? Really? Like, how many companies, how many countries were so vastly impacted by that? And so if you're thinking just short term of like, yeah, I'm going to make 100%. There's no such thing. There is no such thing with stocks. And so you have to think very long term. You have to know why you're doing this and what you're doing this for. So in my case, it's generational wealth. It's generational wealth. I'm doing this for the very long term. And then I think other things that I think I should have also known or learned from starting this journey is that there'll be many people, naysayers, like people who think they know what they're talking about, but they're not even invested in the stock market. So like when I hear people saying, there's no money on the LuSE, companies don't pay dividends, I'm like, where are you getting that information from? I have the data. I'm looking at it right now. Like, I don't know where you're seeing that information from, but I have the data. And so there's this idea of you have to be a person who researches. You can't just listen to people. People will talk and talk and talk and talk, not knowing that actually this is where the foreigners are making massive gains in our country. So for example, the bond market, right? I talk about obviously more than stocks in like as a financial literacy educator, but just as an example, the bonds that we have in Zambia, the government lending out, the government wanting money from, individuals and retailers and all of that. This last auction, over 70% of the demand was coming from foreigners, right? And so that shows you that where people are saying that, hey, the government, whatever, the government doesn't pay back money, and just like, where are you guys hearing that information from? Because many people are making a lot of money. If you ask the right people at BOZ, they'll tell you the government has never defaulted on a local government bond or local government treasury bill. So you have to know who you listen to, and you need to make sure that you actually do your research. Do not just listen to, naysayers and people who don't even have any stake in the game, who are actually not even investing, because you will be misled.
Similarly to what you talked about, what common mistakes do you think people make in their journey with them?
Oh, there's so many. So apart from that part of just listening to people who should not be speaking, I'll give an example. This lady was telling me as part of the shares challenge, because I talked to so many people who are actually now investing in stocks and all of that. This lady was saying she's now 30, she's in her 30s actually, not 30, she's in her 30s. And she's like, you know what? When I was 16 years old, my parents decided to buy me stocks for my 16th birthday. And, they made a big deal out of it. Like, this is actually very important for your future and everything. But then I met one of my mom's friends. This is a story. She met one of her mom's friends who basically was like, they bought you stocks in Zambia. That the companies don't even do anything. This is from a banker, right? And so in her head, she's obviously thinking, this is a banker. Obviously, they know more about these things than I do. And what does she do? She decides to sell them. And now when she was like doing the calculations, she literally cried, because she's just like, why did I sell my stocks? Like, why did I believe that woman who actually doesn't even invest in stocks? Probably she just is talking from, from her head that this is how things are. She just hears this, and how rumors spread and people start twisting things and all of that. And so, yeah, make sure that you know where you're getting your information from, because you may be missing out on very important things that are happening in this country, and missing an opportunity as a youth to actually create wealth because you're listening to the wrong voices. So that's mistake number one. Mistake number two is, I think, picking companies anyhow. As I've mentioned, right, like there is such a thing as buying a stock at a wrong time, in the sense that you buy, for example, I know what happened recently with Lafarge. I was actually talking to one of the women at one of the brokers, and she was just like, people made such a horrible decision that there was all this hype about Lafarge, and people literally bought it when it reached, I think, about 15, right? We're buying it at 15, and now it's at 9. And imagine the emotional turmoil of just buying something because everyone's like, buy Lafarge now, buy Lafarge, buy. And it's like, why are you buying Lafarge now? Do you understand the fundamentals? Is this the right time to buy Lafarge? Have you looked at the data? What is the data telling you? What is the broker, the professionals actually telling you? Is this the right time? And so, yeah, I think just picking companies off of guesswork or what's trending, completely horrible idea. And then the last one I think I'll say is starting late. Guys, this idea of investing, you need to start now. You need to start now. I'll give you an example. If you start investing, right, just in general in Zambia, using treasury bills, which are commonly known as the benchmark investment in Zambia, if you getting that return, so not actually treasury bills, but the return of treasury bills, if you invest 500 kwacha per month from the age of 25, right? You're planning for your retirement at the age of 25, 20, let's just say 20, because you guys are mostly in your 20s probably. So 20, and you invest 500 kwacha per month. By the time you're 50, you would have 7 million kwacha, right? Only 500 kwacha, so it's not too much of money, but it's 500 kwacha. But if you decided to like, no, not yet, I'll get into this, like when I'm a bit older and stuff, this investing thing isn't for me. You start when you're 30. So you wait just 10 years, just 10 years. You're like, no, when I'm married or when I have kids or whatever, 10 years. Do you know what you would have when you're 50? 1 million. 10 years cost you 6 million kwacha. 6 million kwacha. How do you even explain that, right? So starting late and pushing investing to the side is a bad thing because of compound interest. You need to start now. Right now, while you're in university, the small monies that you're earning, start adding them up to start investing. Don't wait till you have millions. You don't need to have millions for you to invest. Start now. So yeah, those are the 3 common mistakes people make.
Okay.
Hello? Okay.
So I think we actually go to the Q&A session. So what resources would you recommend for someone who wants to learn more stock? I know we've talked about doing the research for yourself, but then what additional resources could we use just so that we're more educated on how the stock market works
Yeah.
and what?
Yeah, so my favorite recommendation when it comes to the stock market is this book called Invested by Phil and Danielle Town. It's a brilliant, brilliant book because it's literally a father and a daughter, grown people, but like a father and a daughter, and he's telling the journey of how he is a very wealthy man, very successful investor in America, and his daughter somehow the financial literacy didn't spill to her, and she's a completely blank person. She didn't want to involve herself in anything concerning, learning about finances and the stock market. And so they're sharing the journey of how he got her from being a complete novice, and now she's also a successful investor in America, right? And so he takes her step by step of how to actually start investing, like Warren Buffett. And it's a funny book because you get to see all the quote unquote dumb questions where she's asking him, and you're just like, okay, even I know that answer. Like I know that answer. And you get to see that relationship build as well of how, you can take a person from completely no idea of the stock market to becoming actually a very sensible investor. It gives you all the details of how to analyze companies, how to analyze, where a company is at. It's a very, very brilliant book. I strongly recommend it. And then aside from that, I think YouTube, believe it or not, YouTube, Google have got a lot of information, very good information even. Obviously, don't just listen to anyone who's telling you, pick this stock and you become a millionaire. No, not that kind of information. But things like if you actually want to understand, how do I understand the PE ratio? How do I understand, the profits of a company? How do I understand liabilities? Just Google. I promise you, there's so much information. There's so much information on YouTube that is really, really good. Definitely stay away from anyone who's telling you how to get rich through the stock market. That will be a very bad resource. But generally speaking, Google, YouTube, and that book are a very good starting point for anyone who wants to get invested.
Before we go to the Q&A session, do you mind typing the name and the authors of the book in the chat?
Sure, let me type it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, we will now jump right into the Q&A session. We have our first question from Joseph Chisenga. Is it possible to have more than one broker?
Yeah, you can. If you're using the app, obviously that's I already told you that it's a possibility. And if you're using the direct brokers, there's no one who's going to be like, why do you have a broker with Pangea and stockbrokers? No, you can. I just wouldn't know why you'd want to do that, but if you want to, you can. There's nothing wrong with that. It's almost like asking, can you have 2 bank accounts? You can. No one's going to stop you from having 2 bank accounts, or 3 or 4 or 5 if you want to have 5 of them, but there's no big difference in terms of what they do.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, that question was from Chandi. Joseph's question is, what option is available other than the traditional way?
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Yes, so the traditional way we're saying you go directly through the broker, right? So you open an account with the broker, you send your money to the broker, and the broker is the one obviously then does the buying and selling. Or you can use the app. The app is called My LuSE. You can find it in your Play Store, and you can open an account there. You don't need to have an existing brokerage account. You just pick a broker there and you open an account, and all the companies are there, their prices, they're even bonds on the app, and you can begin to start purchasing. So that's the non-traditional way. This is the technological, I guess, advanced way of purchasing shares now in Zambia.
Okay, thank you for that. I hope that answers your question, Joseph. So Chinyamba asks, what is the best place to look at financial statements of a business and their performance?
I feel like this question answers itself. What is the best place? What do you mean by what is the best place? Because the financial statements are the best place to look at the, or you mean like where are the financial statements? Is that what you mean? So the financial statements of a company are found in the annual report. So every year, a company will release annual reports, which will have all the financial, the statements of the year for the company. And you can find these annual reports on the company's website. Every publicly listed company on their website, or even on the LuSE page, your broker, all these annual reports are already there, and they have all the audited financial statements. So yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Chandi asks, how much was your first investment? And yeah, how much was your first investment when you started buying stocks?
So my first company probably, no, I can't remember. Probably, let me try and do the math quickly. Probably about 500, probably about 500 kwacha. Yeah, and that was before the app existed, by the way. I told you I bought my first stocks at the very beginning of the year. The app came out around May, somewhere there, and so there was no option to buy stocks as cheap as 30 kwacha. Like there was no such option. But now with the app, you can actually buy very low amounts. I would just, to be on the safe side, I'll tell you maybe 100 kwacha, but I've seen people buying for like even 20 kwacha. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. I hope that answers your questions. And then Chandi asks, for a start, how many companies would you recommend to invest in? And on average, how much should one invest in only on a monthly basis?
Yeah, so I mean, this not the first part of the question is obviously about just portfolio diversification, right? So definitely do not invest all your money into one company. That's not smart. Like what happens if the company is badly performing, the company shuts down, you lose all your money, right? So this just becomes an issue of what your target is. For example, like if you're only investing 500 kwacha at the beginning, I don't think necessarily you need to have like 6 companies. Like that's quite a lot. Like, you know, the amount of money that you have is so small that having that much diversification may not necessarily be necessary. So maybe even 3 companies is fine and stuff. Your broker should be able to help you, but it depends really on things like your risk. Some people have that risk averse. They're like, oh, I don't want to lose even a 20 kwacha. Like I can't lose, I can't see my money go down like that. So like, it just really depends on a person. But yeah, so starting off, maybe I started off with like about 3-4 companies. But your broker should be able to guide you on that. And how much should one invest on a monthly basis? It depends on your income. It depends on your income. I can't tell you because I don't know how much you're earning, how much expenses you have, how much you have left after you remove all your expenses, how much what you're trying to get to. So for example, in my case, I'm trying to reach generational wealth. That's a lot of money. Generational wealth is a lot of money. So obviously it means I have to, in my mind, be investing a bit more money than someone who's just like, no, you know what? I just maybe want, at the end of the day, I should just give this as a gift to someone, or yeah, so it just depends really.
Okay, thank you. So we've been talking about stocks a lot. So Mtise asks, how best can you get a T-bill or government bonds, as in bidding successfully?
Through your bank. through your bank should be able to help you with that. And to actually, the best part is the government actually, the Bank of Zambia has changed the allocations. Well, it's only effective probably, I think, is it next week or the week after? They've changed the allocations, which means your bid will actually most likely be successful, that now you need over 500,000 kwacha for you to bid. So if you have less than that, most likely your bid will be successful. So using your bank should be the easiest way.
Thank you very much for that answer. Musenga asks, is the Zambian stock market very similar to other stock markets in the world, such that all the info online applies to Zambia?
So yeah, this is a very good question. So no, in fact, first of all, let's start with, in general, no market is exactly the same. Different economies will have different factors, just a different environment within which companies are performing. So you can't necessarily compare, like even in the UK, you can't just be like, oh, the UK is like the American market, stock market. No, you can't do that. So there is an element of contextual relevance, or even regional relevance, in the sense that maybe you don't just look at Zambia, but you're looking at maybe sub-Saharan Africa or SADC region and stuff. So in that sense, you can't just compare any stock market just like that. But there are certain fundamentals that go across the board in terms of specific industries. So for example, the banking industry, for example, it's a commonly known thing that wherever you are in the world, a bank will have generally more liabilities, like more debts than maybe a service type of business, right? That goes across the board, because the way, by nature of how a bank operates, it's borrowing money from people. So technically speaking, wherever you are in the world, it will have a lot of debt in comparison to if you're comparing to like a service type of company. So there's certain things that do go across the board, so you do have to be careful of that. But yeah, like even if it's not in Zambia, you can't just compare a stock market directly. There are certain contextual things that are relevant or not relevant.
Thank you for that. Maria asks, she wants to find out how risky it is to actually purchase shares, if at all there are any risks.
Yes, that's a very good question. So stocks are considered risky investments because, again, you're investing in a business, right? So you have to remember, at the end of the day, think of stocks as a business because it is an actual business, right? So with a business, what does that mean? You can't predict performance. You can't say, like a fixed deposit, when you put money in your fixed deposit, you know that at the end of the year, it will be 20%. Regardless of whether there's a pandemic or what, 20% is yours. A business doesn't operate like that. Think of a normal business. If you've had a side hustle before, can you really say that, okay, at the end of the year, guaranteed I will have this much money? You can't do that. You can't say that. What if you don't have customers? What if, the management says something racist and then they get canceled and the company is now kind of in the shadows? You can't really predict like that. So what that means, technically speaking, is because you can't predict performance, the price of the share is very volatile. It can change, but over time, and that's why you think of investing in stocks as a long-term thing, that over time, because there's certain fundamentals of businesses that hold, if a business has got good fundamentals, over time, you know that it will perform well. In the short run, it may be moving like this, up, down, up, down, up, down. But over time, because you believe in what the company is about, you've seen the fundamentals, the investments that the company is making, that over time it will do well. So in that sense, yes, there is risk that if you buy today, as I told you, I've seen some of my stocks go down and they've come back up, and they've gone significantly up, like 100% plus up. So prices are very volatile in the short run, but over time, if the fundamentals of the company are right, it will go up. So there is risk involved, but if you have strategy, you should be fine.
Okay, thank you. So we've spoken about brokers, how you can have more than one, and the importance to some degree. Joseph would like to know how you get to choose the right broker. Is there different in charges, maybe?
Yeah,
Yes.
as I've mentioned, like literally people fuss about this, but I can promise you it's the least, like it's the least big deal. Like it's like the smallest thing that you need to worry about, as long as the company is licensed. So definitely don't hear someone say, "Yay, use me to buy stocks." Like obviously, definitely don't do that. It has to be licensed by the SEC and LuSE and everything. But as long as they're licensed by SEC and LuSE, they do the exact same thing. Like literally, like a bank. What makes you bank with Zanaco versus FNB? Let's be honest. Don't they just all keep the money for us? But the difference with a bank and a broker, the bank actually makes money for you. The broker doesn't make any money for you. So it's not like they're giving you interest, it's not like they're giving you better returns or anything. Like they don't do any of that. They just buy and sell for you. Literally, that's their main job. Everything else just becomes a thing of like, no, this broker is more responsive. I like this broker. They talk nice to me. Or like, it just becomes an issue, like maybe service. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if they're licensed, they do the exact same thing. So yeah.
Okay, thank you for that one. I think you did speak on this next question. You did speak about it a little. But anyway, Chilombo asks, would you advise someone to buy stocks in just one company or to spread their investment among many companies?
Yeah, so definitely you cannot put all your eggs in one basket. If that basket falls, all your eggs are broken. So spreading across is important.
Okay, thank you for that. Musenga asks, so do all companies release dividends at the same time, and how often do they release them? Actually, just to add to that, what's an example of like an amount that you've been paid out as a dividend?
Okay, good question. So no, they don't release them at the same time, because what happens essentially is technically, let me start with the first part. How often do they release dividends? So a company is not mandated to pay out dividends. Let's start from there. Companies are not mandated because when you mandate them, you're basically saying you are guaranteeing that you have profits. So therefore you have to give people, because dividends are basically just, a thank you to the shareholders from the profits of the company. But you can't guarantee profits. So how you can't mandate them that they have to pay. They get to decide like, okay, you know what? We didn't perform really well this year. We're not going to give out dividends. Or we performed very well, but actually we want to reinvest that money to build the business. So we can't pay out dividends this year. So it just depends. So from that perspective, they're not mandated to pay out. But when they do pay out dividends, it can be either once a year or twice a year. So that's the maximum in Zambia, twice a year. And the aspect of, do they release dividends at the same time? No. So how it happens essentially is, if they're, for example, this year, I think there've been so many companies that have given out dividends. But when they declare that is at the annual general meeting, companies will have different ones. So maybe a company had their AGM in March, because that's when all the directors are going to be there on the board. So then that's when they announce that you receive dividends for 2020, in April or in June. And then this month, I know some companies are having annual general meetings. So then they'll tell you at the end of the month, you receive a dividend. So it just depends on when they have their annual general meeting. But aside from that, you can't really, but when they pay, if they are paying in that year, it will be dependent on when they have their annual general meeting. And then to Elizabeth's question of how dividends are paid out. So dividends are paid out as dividends per share. So it's based off of how many shares you have. And this is why when you're investing, when you're starting off, if you're going to start off with 10 shares, even if you're in the American stock market, you'll probably receive like maybe $2, like that's not a lot of money. But over time, that's why you keep on investing, so that when you now say that I have 1 million shares and they're telling you we're giving, 2 kwacha for every share, guess what? You have 2 million kwacha essentially. So it depends, but generally speaking, our companies actually pay very well. Like when you compare our market to the American stock market, the American stock market dividend yield is significantly smaller than our market. Like, but yeah, you can have maybe some, they'll pay off like maybe 1 kwacha per share, 0.05 per share. But it's based off of the shares. The same way that when you're buying a stock, if you bought a stock, imagine at, let's say, 0.113 gwe, do you really think they'll be like, oh, we're giving you 50 kwacha per share? No, like that's not how it works, right? Like it's also based off of the company. But when you compare that to then how much the stock was costing, the percentage tends to be quite high compared to the American stock market. But it's not a lot of money when you're starting off. So you need to keep investing so that you're able to see that money grow. So yeah.
Thank you very much for that clarification. So this one isn't a question, more of a contribution from Chandy. So Chandy says, if you're avoiding cost, stockbroker Zambia doesn't have any charges when opening an account. So that
Yes,
was
that's
just
true.
a contribution from Chandy.
And some other brokers as well don't have charges on them.
Are you able to like mention any other broker?
I know Momco doesn't have charges, and I think equity, but yeah, you can just confirm. You can just call them and ask them. But yeah, there are quite a few that have different requirements.
I think we have one more question in the chat. So can you buy stocks from companies abroad? If so, how?
Yes. You obviously would need to enter into their stock market. So if, for example, you're investing into the South African stock market, there are many apps. You have to use their brokers essentially in that market. There are apps as well in other countries. In South Africa, I know there's the Easy Equities. If you're going to the American market, like it just depends. So yeah, you can definitely invest. Just you can't invest obviously using the LuSE app because the LuSE app is for Zambian companies. But if you're going into another market, you'd obviously have to research what brokers they have. We're going to have to research what apps they have for you to be able to invest into their markets. But yeah, you can, and many people do.
Okay, we have Ntise asking, just a clarification, is my LuSE app the current app being used?
Yes, because it's true and it's obviously early stages. Yeah, that is the app that we're using.
Okay, I think there are no more questions in the chat, but previously Joseph had asked, was it Joseph? Yes, it was Joseph. He mentioned how he was interested in the product that you had mentioned earlier. So maybe you could let us know how he can reach you, so we can access that product.
Yeah, so the product is actually called the Shareholders Companion Sheet, and it was literally a love offering for me to people who do want to become informed investors, right? As I said, I don't like this idea of people just picking companies off guesswork and just in their heads, they just pick a company because of the trend and stuff. So this is like an Excel workbook which has like data for all the companies on the stock market, on our LuSE stock market. And it has things like the net margin, the return on invested capital, the return on equity. It has all the dividends that have been paid out for all the companies. But the best part is that if you don't understand these things, it comes with videos. It comes with a guidebook that helps you actually understand and be able to know how to analyze the company's performance, right? Because as I said, there is such a thing as buying a company at a wrong time. So yeah, so it's currently going for 300 kwacha, and it's literally a very underpriced thing because the LuSE, when it comes to their annual reports, like literally just for 1 year worth of data, they'll charge you 500 kwacha. Like, so I imagine being given data for, I had to go into each of the annual reports, like over 150 annual reports to get this information. That's important for like at the fundamental level, how is the business performing, right? And so, yeah, and it gives you all the ways that you can be able to analyze the company, and it helps you that when you're even talking to a broker, you're not talking from just completely blank, where they're telling you, okay, yeah, currently it's overvalued, currently it's undervalued, and you just, blank. So yeah, it's going for 300 kwacha. You can just DM me on my, whether it's my Facebook page, Chanozya Kabaghe, or my Instagram at Miss Kabaghe, Miss_Kabaghe. Let me just put them here. But yeah, it's everywhere on my pages, so you should be able to see it if you're interested in it. It's going for 300 kwacha only, and this price will go up over time. I call it it's a sale. I'm trying to just give access to as many people as possible, but yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we can begin to wrap up our session today. Chanozya, do you have any closing remarks, any like additional words before we end the webinar?
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you guys for having me. Honestly, I feel like if you're in your early 20s, your late teens, like guys, that is the perfect time. Like start learning financial literacy, like whether it's not even stocks, but bonds, treasury bills, fixed deposits, you need to start now. Like I promise you, there are a lot of people on my pages who are like in their 40s and they just literally are just like, why didn't I start this earlier? Why didn't I start this earlier? So you guys are the perfect stage to start thinking about these things. The circles you have, like be talking about investing, be talking about like how you're starting companies, have these very brilliant conversations, because trust me, time moves very fast. And before you know it, you are married or you have kids, life is happening, you're taking care of your parents and whatever. Next thing, you can't afford to take your kids to abroad for school because you didn't plan for their investment. I mean, for their education, you didn't invest. Next thing, you can't retire adequately. You can't have the life of your dreams because you didn't invest. So start now. I promise you, you will thank me like when I'm older and we're older together. You just be like, thank you, Chano, for telling me to start now. And yeah, so yes, those are my last words. Thank you so much as well to Elizabeth and Luvuto. I have enjoyed this session. I hope you guys are inspired. I hope you guys are interested. You can follow me on my pages. I talk about more than stocks, but like, I just want you guys to get started. Get started, please. If there's anything, just get started. You won't be a professional investor when starting. Even with a 500 kwacha, start learning as you go. Start learning as you go. Be dedicated to learning. You guys are smart people here in Unzabeka. I'm also an economics graduate, so I relate with you, but like, it has to go beyond just the books. Practice, as you're saying, you're trying to bridge that gap between theory and practice. You learn through practice. So yeah, thank you so much to you guys for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was a really exciting session. I learned so much personally. I'm sure even Luvuto can agree. Luvuto, would you like to give any closing remarks as we prepare to leave?
Okay, thank you once again. It's really been informative and I've enjoyed today's session. Otherwise, we can end here.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us. We will definitely be in touch for the resources. Um, Chanozya, someone says they had sent you a request on LinkedIn.
Yes, I have just accepted it.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really did have a very exciting session. We will definitely be joining the challenge. Yeah, the time is now start by Dr. But thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Please do.
Thank you everyone for joining our session. We have come to the end. We hope you had an informative session. Have a good night.